Hello and welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. It is Friday and finally I'm able to say we have a new manager in place. Ange Postecoglou was officially announced as Celtic manager yesterday as part of a really quite interesting video presentation that was on Celtic TV and on the Celtic website. But we'll get into that in due course. We also have Dan Orowitz from the Japan Times joining us in about 15 minutes just to give us a bit of the lowdown on Ange's time in Japan and hopefully educate us a little bit on what we can hopefully expect from the new manager. But before we do that, Tony, how you doing?
I'm very well, Laurie, yourself?
I'm not too bad. There's been a lot of back and forth on Twitter and all that kind of thing. Some folk down in the doldrums, some folk like me far too excited with no real reason to be, but you know, we'll get there. Jim, how you doing?
Good, Laura, thank you.
Good. And before we get into the new manager chat, which I'm sure will take up the majority of the rest of the show, you might have seen last night I shared our hashtag Guess the Celt, which has become a bit of a feature on the Friday mornings. For anybody who guessed, there was a few different yeses there, so it was a bit more of a difficult one. But the answer, of course, was the unforgettable forever young Johnny Doyle. Tony, I'll come to you first. As a younger fan myself, I've heard the stories about his personality, what he was like as a player on and off the pitch, but he's taken on a bit of a almost mystical sense because of the way that he, you know, unfortunately lost his life so young. What are your memories of him, both as a player and as a person?
My memories of him are this: Real Madrid 1980. My father took me to that game and told me to watch Laurie Cunningham, who was playing for Real Madrid at the time. And I remember Laurie Cunningham playing in English football. That was me kind of getting to grips with football. And it was a quarter-final of the European Cup, obviously, first leg. And it was the last time Celtic have reached that stage in either the guise of the European Cup and the Champions League. So for that, it sticks out for that alone. And Johnny Doyle scored a wonderful header. You know, I was just, and Arthur Montford's commentaries embedded in my mind because I went home and I watched it that night, and he just Snedden floating it across, in comes Doyle with a header, and he gets really excited. Oh, it's a goal! Johnny Doyle scores again, made by Snedden. Oh, what a goal! Oh, what a beautiful goal, Johnny Doyle! And you just say to yourself, do you know what? That's the way Celtic supporters want to remember Johnny Doyle. I think there's a bit of Johnny Doyle in every Celtic fan, because he brings out the dreamer and the romantic in every Celtic fan, because he was a fan that was plucked from the stands to play for the club, and he lived out his dream. And I think the Celtic supporters love guys like that. They love Johnny Doyle for that. Not the greatest or most gifted of players, but he knew what it meant to pull on that jersey, and he gave 100% every time. Jim will maybe tell you that as well, maybe seen more games than I did. But if you get it straight off the bat, that's why the Celtic supporters love Johnny Doyle and Tommy Burns, because what it meant to play for Celtic Football Club. And people of an older generation will know that Johnny Doyle played in two of the greatest games at Parkhead, the old Parkhead with the jungle. Played in the 4-2, 10 men won the league game, although he gets sent off. Given his all, but the players that day said he was just so pumped up and so super excited about trying to win the league against Rangers that he just got the better of him and he booted Alan McDonald for no reason. Celtic came back to win the game, one of the best games ever at Celtic Park. Older people tell you, Jim maybe tell you. And I cried because my father wouldn't take me, and I grabbed his leg and I held on to it and I asked him to take me. And he wouldn't take me, and he left me in my grands in Castlemilk, and I was raging. And then obviously the Real Madrid game. And I quote this a lot, I say it all the time, but I just think that it's no better tribute to any Celtic player that's passed away. They never die who live in the hearts they leave behind. His death was so tragic, so poignant and so sad. And I think as a player, as he wasn't the greatest, but he gave his all. And as a person, I believe he was a force of nature, because he was in that dressing room and he just loved the fact that he was there. And players tell lots of wonderful stories. I think he used to irk Jock Stein, because he would give his team talks and say, ask any questions, and Johnny Doyle would say something really stupid, you know. So, and he was just full of boy daftness, but just loved the fact that he lived his dream. And I think we all can resonate with Johnny Doyle because it's something we all want to do, or we would have wanted to do growing up, play for Celtic.
Yeah, I think that nails it from what I've heard of him. Jim, I'll come to you. Obviously, as Tony says, you might have more memories than Tony, and certainly more than me of Johnny Doyle, but the epitome of a cult hero, if ever there was one, surely.
I think it's always hard to follow Tony Haggerty, storyteller, and he covers a lot of things that I would have said. I think if you say the words Johnny Doyle, for the people who saw him play, there's always people would just smile at the memory of Johnny Doyle. And if ever there was the phrase one of our own, that would apply to Johnny Doyle. And as Tony said, maybe one of the games he's best remembered for was the fact he got sent off, but things worked out that night. So maybe it might have been different if we didn't win that particular night. I was the team that Johnny played in, late 70s and team into the early 80s, was the first time I started to go to the games on a regular basis, home and away. So that was one of my favourite teams, and Johnny played in that team. And I was lucky enough to see his finest hour, and it wasn't the game Tony mentioned. It was a game a few weeks earlier than that. It's actually his finest tours. It was a replay in the Cup at Love Street. When I say lucky, I was lucky because thousands of fans get locked out from the game. And we actually tried to explain this to younger fans. What do you mean fans get locked out? Because back in the day, games weren't all ticket. Just turned up. You know, when this was a Wednesday night game, meant there was thousands couldn't get in. Thousands were still going to come into the park 30 minutes after the game had started. White hot atmosphere at Love Street, almost 30,000 at the park. A couple of months ago, we talked about Hillsborough. Speak to any football fan who went to football before the 90s, and they'll tell you there were so many possible games that could have been Hillsborough, and that was one of them. That was one of the most sandwich, like sardines, couldn't move. White hot atmosphere, lost a goal in the first 10 minutes. McAdam gets sent off after 20 minutes, rather controversially. Places going bonkers, cans and bottles getting thrown into the park. These were the days before when you could bring cans and bottles into the park. Johnny equalises just before half time. Second half, we lose a second goal to a penalty kick, 2-1 down. Johnny drills into the box, is taken down. Bobby Leonard scores from the spot. Full time, 90 minutes. Played the best part of 70 minutes with 10 men. Every man a hero. First couple of minutes of extra time, Johnny picks the ball up halfway line. Mazy dribble into the box. Rounds the keeper. A cute angle. High at the top of the net. 3-2. Hold on to the end of the game. Unbelievable atmosphere at the game. You get certain games where you think, I was there, that was the game. I found over the years, because there's so much that you can watch on television, back in the day, you had to be there. You had to be at those kind of games. And that's one of the games I look back on. And a few weeks later, the game that Tony said, and that was an all-ticket game. And I found myself in the jungle, which I never really went to. So I was right in line with the goal that Johnny Doyle scored. And with a header, and he rose to meet the ball. It's such an unusual goal for Johnny Doyle to score. And we should have won that game by more. That was a kind of opportunity. And it was actually my 21st birthday. A few weeks, one of my mates got me a T-shirt that said Johnny Doyle's biggest fan. On the back it said Mrs. Doyle. But he'll be remembered fondly by Celtic fans, as you said, Laura, at the start, because he was taken far too young. And he gave Celtic fans a lot of very, very good memories. The one Tony said there, but the one I remember was he was just outstanding at Love Street, playing with 10 men. And we eventually won the Cup that year, but we had to get through that game first. And those were the days. I mean, I know I'm older than everyone else, but you look back on that kind of era and those kind of games and that kind of atmosphere under the lights, not all ticket, people turning up, just bedlam at times, fond memories, and Johnny Doyle's a part of that. So yeah, he was taken far, far too soon.
I think you did yourself a disservice, Jim, starting off that. I think that was some fantastic storytelling and some great memories of Johnny Doyle. Tony, do you think we'll ever see the likes of that kind of player again? That kind of, bleeding green and white? The closest thing we've had to that in recent years is Kieran Tierney, but obviously, the way modern football is, it was inevitable he was never going to last in the Celtic shirt. Do you think it's something that we can see? Of course we've got James Forrest and Callum McGregor, who at this point don't look like they're going anywhere, so they're pretty high up there as well. Is it something you think we can maintain going forward?
I think players like that are very rare, and as you say, football and economics dictates that if you get a player that's so dyed in the wool, and they're such a great player like Kieran, they're going to have to leave the club.
Yeah.
But the club never leaves them. Kieran Tierney often speaks about the fact that he wants to finish his career at Celtic. As Jim alluded to there, it was a different day back then, different times, and you kind of get the sepia tinted glasses on with these kind of players, you know what I mean? And very, very rarely now players have testimonials, because players don't serve 10 years at football clubs anymore, because if they're any good, they move. That's just a fact of life, and especially now, with the money being so great as it is that they can earn elsewhere, you're lucky to get 4 or 5 years out a Celtic player, and it's a shame. But, that's why I think these players are so well remembered, the likes of Johnny Doyle, Burns, McStay as well, your hero Paul McStay, one club men, that people just admire that. Because these guys, I mean, Paul McStay in particular, had a chance to go elsewhere but didn't, so I think that there's attributes there to be admired, but I think it's very hard in the modern day game if you've got a player that comes through the ranks at Celtic and does as well as Kieran Tierney has, they'll stay at the club for time on perpetual motion. It's a shame, but it was ever this. I think football and finances have dictated that that's the. Very rarely do you get one club men now. That's the way it is.
Yeah, I think it's an unfortunate side effect of the way the game's going, but we live in hope that these things will prevail throughout time. Just apologies to anybody watching. I seem to have a problem with my internet today, so if I drop out, guys, you'll have to carry the can as far as that's concerned. But we'll carry on regardless.
Oh, don't say that.
Before we get Dan on, we should hopefully have him on in about 5 minutes or so. Once he's with us in the call. Jim, I'll come to you first. The announcement of Ange Postecoglou obviously came yesterday morning. I unfortunately didn't have a signal on my phone and was in work at the time, and so came out to a barrage of messages and all sorts that announced it to me before I saw the video itself. But did you see the announcement, the video, all that kind of thing? What did you make of both what he was saying about, what he wanted to bring to the club, and obviously what Dom Mackay was saying in follow-up to that?
I think from Ange's point of view, I think the kind of key thing he said was people have got to believe in me. And I think where Ronnie Dyler fell down a wee bit, I don't think the players believed in him. And I think if everyone gets on the Ange bus, then I think we've got a chance. He came across really well. He's a clever man, he's an experienced man. Somebody made the point, was it Paul was making the point about a manager coming from that league and going to Belgium? Was it Kevin Muscat? It didn't last particularly long. So I think there's different standards, and there's always a risk when you hire a manager. Even if you have what you think is a very good manager. If I get back to 2005, 2006, Rangers brought in Paul Le Guen, who was the hottest ticket in Europe, lasted 6 months. So there's no guarantees with this. I mean, I think what we said last week was it's a bit of a pantomime in terms of where we got to, but I think we have to leave that stuff behind. I think you have to chunk a lot of this stuff up. We can talk about the board and how shambolic they've been, but in terms of going forward, he's the manager. We get behind him and we try to see as many good things about him as possible. He came across really well. He's happy to uproot his family, travel 6,000 miles, 12-month rolling contract. That's a big risk that he's taken. He says all the right things. He comes across really well. You hear lots of good things about him. I just hope he's off to a good start. I think it's going to be one of these things that's going to be spectacularly good or spectacularly bad. I don't see any kind of middle ground in here. And I think it's going to be a hard start to the league, because I think we're going to end up at Aberdeen or at Hearts in the first game of the season. So a baptism of fire straight away. And I think as long as we get maximum points for the first few games, we've got a chance. But if we start dropping points early, loads of pressure on him. But he comes across as a good guy, so we wish him well.
100% we do, and we'll come back to Dom Mackay actually maybe after Dan's been on to talk to us about Ange, but we'll stick with Ange for the moment. Tony, obviously people have reservations about it. You've spoke about them yourself. Russell Boyce has quite succinctly put together some concerning stats on behalf of the new manager. There are obviously going to be concerns about somebody coming in who's got no experience of managing in Europe, bar a short stint in Greece 20 years ago. But surely, you know, like Jim says, you know, we have to back him. He's here now. None of the mess that he's inherited is of his own making. We've got to just go with it, haven't we?
I made the point that I had no downer on Ange Postecoglou. It was the processes that had led us to selecting him as the managerial choice. Now that he's here, and I said before, when he comes in, if it was him, then you have to get behind him. That's what you do as a supporter. I don't wish him ill. I wish him to succeed. He's the manager of the club I support. So, first and foremost. And then I was looking back at what people said when they assumed the Celtic position. And I thought he got off to a really good start in terms of what he said, right? It's got nothing to do with his managerial ability or what he'll bring to the table, but just off the bat saying the right things. And I looked, and Martin O'Neill said this in July 2000, "It's an absolute honour for me to be the manager here, an absolute honour. I will do everything I possibly can to bring some success to this football club." That was on the stairs, and then you heard the guy saying, "That's all we want, Martin." Remember that?
Yeah.
And then Brendan Rodgers said, "I will give everything I have and I'll do all I can to bring our supporters exciting, entertaining and winning football. To be given this fantastic opportunity to be part of such a truly great football club is a dream come true." Ange Postecoglou, "I'll be doing everything I can to get our great club back on top. We want to entertain our fans and we want to win. These are the objectives we always set myself, which I now begin work on. This opportunity has been given to me as one of the greatest honours in football." I like that. I like that he knows and he's aware of the honour that he's accepted. And as Jim said, he's not doing this lightly. He's flying 6,000 miles across the world for a 12-month rolling contract. And I'm like Jim, this can go spectacularly well or it can go spectacularly wrong. But I will support him. I'm sceptical, but I'll support him. But now the board has to back their man. This is the man that they've chosen, so they have to give him all the tools to succeed in the job. And fans have said to me, "Tony, come up with a rip-roaring, free-scoring, never boring for Ange Postecoglou." And I couldn't really, but the best I came up with was the Postecoglou Socceroo Didgeridoo Army. There you go.
Wow.
Give me a P. By the time you finish that, the game will be finished. Right? So I want a banner, the Postecoglou Socceroo Didgeridoo Army.
Yeah, well, on that note, before we spell out the rest of that and use up the entire hour's worth of the podcast, I'm glad to say that we have in waiting Dan Orlowitz from the Japan Times. So Dan should be joining us any second now. There we are. Dan, hello, welcome to the show.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. Welcome, congratulations. This is a huge announcement for you, big announcement for us. Incredible for Australian football. Everyone wins.
Everyone wins.
Everyone
hopefully.
wins.
Yeah, hopefully Celtic will be winning as well off the back of this. But you obviously are based over in Japan, working covering the J League, something that, you know, myself and a lot of other contributors to the show confess we don't know an awful lot about. So when Ange was appointed, you know, we had a lot of concerns, a lot of, you know, curiosity about what he might bring to the team. I read your piece in the Japan Times on his time with Yokohama Marinos, and I thought it was really, really encouraging. But I'd really love to hear your thoughts, and I'm sure the listeners would, on what he can bring in terms of a football and philosophy to the club.
He is probably the most, I wouldn't say, in a way, the most philosophical manager we've had come to Japan, just because he believes in what he does so utterly and completely and so thoroughly. As I wrote in my piece, there is Plan A, which is this really just attractive, aggressive style of attacking football, and there is Plan B, which is make Plan A better, make Plan A work. He is not a man, he is not going to drop to a more defensive strategy because his attack isn't working. He's going to fix his attack, and whether that means getting the players on board with the tactics, or if they're not on board, getting new players. That's what he's going to do. He is this tenacious bulldog of a man who just wants his team to score goals and do it in the most attractive and entertaining way possible. So, you know, the perfect manager, I would hope, for a neutral, for a home fan, even opponents. He has gotten a lot of respect here from the teams, from his players, and even from the teams he's faced, because game recognized game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that definitely came across in the piece that you wrote. An interesting point of the piece that I saw was you mentioned that he likes everybody to call him boss. He likes everybody to address him in that manner, and he's very much a leader. There's been some discussion here whether there will be a director of football appointed at the club, and as yet we don't know if that's a situation that will come to fruition. What's the structure like that he's been working in at the football club? You know, is he very much the top man where he goes, or do you think he could work under conditions where he was, you know, maybe answering to somebody like a director of football?
In the past, even when he's working under a director of football or a sporting director, he's still very much involved in the scouting process, in the recruitment process. This was true in the A-League. This has been true at Yokohama. Obviously, here he's had the resources of City Football Group, which owns nearly 20% of Yokohama F. Marinos, and so they've been able to tap into resources that a lot of J-League clubs don't have, all with the end goal of finding players who aren't just good on paper individually, but players who fit his playing style and his playing philosophy. He's not looking for a star to build his squad around. He's looking for pieces of the puzzle. Mm. And he's a smart man. He's not just an X's and O's type of coach. He understands the players. He understands the needs of the squad. And I think that he will work well with whoever is in charge above him and contribute to that conversation. And he's not going to be a yes man who's accepting recruitments that have been decided before his time. I'm sure that he has had his input. I'm sure he will have even more input now that his appointment is official, and he's going to build his squad, because it isn't Celtic's squad anymore. It's Ange Postecoglou's squad. They're his boys, and that's what he's going to send out onto the pitch.
That all sounds really encouraging, and before I get Tony and Jim involved and hear their thoughts on what you've said about him, the last thing I was going to ask you, just for now, is there's the other concern we have as Celtic supporters, and it might sound a bit rich considering I don't know how much you know about Scottish football, but you know the standard of it is of a certain standard, but obviously Celtic are hoping to achieve more in Europe and against higher calibre opposition. What is the standard of football like in Japan compared to, you know, say some of the more mid-tier or higher tier European leagues? Does he face a high calibre of opposition week in, week out that he has to test himself against?
The J-League is arguably, and I think fairly so, a top 10 league in the world in terms of competitiveness, in terms of the quality of play. We are certainly not at the level of the Premier League. We are not at the level of La Liga. We are not at the level of Serie A. But if you're looking at sort of the bottom of the European top 10, your Belgiums, your Portugals, your Hollands, that's where we slot in. It's a very competitive league where every season 7 or 8 teams go in thinking they have a legitimate chance at winning the title. Week in, week out, it is a very competitive league up and down the table. It's a very competitive footballing pyramid overall. We saw on Wednesday, Yokohama lost to Honda FC, who are the most storied amateur side in the country. To call them amateur is sort of a misnomer. They're really just a professional team that Honda doesn't want to make professional. Because they would rather be invested in motorsports. But you know, we have lots of teams like that in Japan, and the magic of the J-League is that on any given week, a minnow can beat Yokohama or Kawasaki or Nagoya. It's very hard to predict, and that's what we love about it, is that it is so unpredictable. So he hasn't been in a 2-horse race. He's been in 8-horse marathons. And so it is definitely going to be a different situation for him to come into in Scotland, in Glasgow, where there's 2 teams, and those are the only 2 teams that matter. And that's something I'm sure he's prepared for. He's a smart man, and he wouldn't have taken this job if he didn't know what he was getting into.
That certainly comes across from what we've seen of his initial interviews with the club. He certainly seems like a man who's well educated and experienced in football. Jim, I'll come to you for your thoughts on some of what Dan said there. Are you encouraged by what you've heard? Do you think that, based on what Dan's saying there, that we've got a lot more to be excited about?
I think they would be excited about a free-flowing Tony Haggerty type phrase for a Celtic team. I think my big concern, if I've got a big concern, is you win leagues by not losing goals at the back. So my question to Dan is, how is Ange defensively? Because last season we were atrocious. We couldn't defend set pieces. We lost a lot of silly goals. We scored lots of goals, as we normally do, but we couldn't defend to save ourselves. If we don't get the defence right next year, we won't win the league next year. So defence is just as important as going forward next year.
I am not here to defend Ange Postecoglou on his defending. Even Ange Postecoglou, most of the time, will not defend Ange Postecoglou's defending. He is far more concerned with his build-up and his attack and his finishing than he tends to be about his back line. And that's not to say that he doesn't care about defending, but attacking is just at the core and at the fringes of his philosophy. Now, if you look at the results that Marinos achieved in 2018, there was a lot of inconsistency. They did give up a lot of goals that season, scored 56, which was tied for second best in the league, gave up 56. There were teams that gave up a lot more than 56, but that is still a lot to surrender in a season. And every goal you give up, every point does matter, and I recognize that. Ange is not a manager who comes in on day one and flips a switch and everything is better. That's not who he is. If the Celtic board were not aware of that when he came on, that is quite frankly their problem. Ange is a rebuilder. You've heard of, if you have kids, you've heard of Bob the Builder. We've got Ange the rebuilder. He came to a Marinos side that very much lost its way of things, that was sort of spinning its wheels under Eric Momberts. And he instilled his philosophy and built the club around him in such a way that now, I think the measure of how good he was for Marinos is that we have no idea how they're going to do now that he's gone. Because there is nobody in Japan who can replace Ange Postecoglou. So this is a long-winded way of saying, don't worry about the defense. It will work itself out, because it did, and we did see it improve in 2019. We saw that under Park Il-gyu, who was fantastic. And I posted a graphic on Twitter earlier today. Since the J League started tracking travel distance for individual players in 2015, top 30 goalkeepers are all Marinos goalkeepers or Park at Sagan Tosu just after he left Marinos. Those goalkeepers know how to run. And when they've given up, let's call them what they are, dumb goals, Ange knows he isn't going to throw them under the bus. He knows it's not their fault for playing how he wants them to play. He gets very disappointed with his players when they don't play how he wants to play. But when they're doing as they're supposed to do, he backs his boys. And I find that a very admirable quality in a manager. He calls himself the boss. I think, quite frankly, boss is easier for Japanese players to pronounce than Postecoglou. I think that is a little bit to do with it, and that does make it easier. But the culture around the club has been that the buck stops with him. In the end, he is the one who is responsible for the team's results, and it is the players' fault if they are not playing as they are supposed to. But if they do it right and they still don't get the result at the end, then it's on him.
Oh, well, Tony, encouraging to hear that we're potentially got a manager who's going to take responsibility for the decisions that he makes. something that has been found wanting in some of the recent previous appointments. What do you make of some of Dan's assessments of Postecoglou, and does it stand you in any better stead about him coming in?
I'm happy about what Jim said, that you could be watching the rip-roaring free scoring, never boring. But what concerns me greatly is that Dan's just said, don't worry about the defence, it will sort itself out. The very fact that Dan said that has every Celtic supporter worrying like hell. Right? I mean, because we're going to end up watching a lot of 4-3s and 4-2s or whatever, high-scoring games. As Jim alluded to there, our defence last season was our Achilles heel. This is something that we need to address. And if Postecoglou's teams are attack-minded but defensively fragile, Dan, that worries me greatly.
I promise you all, I've said this numerous times during my recent tour of Celtic media. I will continue to say it. Nobody has had more fun in the last 3.5 years in the J League than Yokohama F. Marinos fans. Now, I know that you're not just looking for fun. I know that you want results, you want wins, you want
fun for win, Dan. Winning.
but winning is fun. But I think that this is a great chance for Celtic fans to discover different joys. And I think that there is joy in the process, and I think that there will especially be joy when you get the results. And I think that all of us who cover the J League have been asked the question, which is, what does Ange need to succeed? And all of us have given the same answer, which is that he needs patience and understanding. And all of us have been told the same thing, which is that no fucking way is he going to get that at Celtic. Sorry, are we a clean podcast? Are we blue? Or
we try to be.
I apologize. I checked whether a couple things were okay to say or not. I should have checked the profanity level. But the point is that the reason that he succeeded was because the players backed him. He never lost the locker room. He never lost the boardroom. He never lost the stands. I think that the most important thing is that if the players understand what he's trying to accomplish, then you're on the right path. Because as we've seen so often in Japan, when players doubt a foreign manager, and foreign managers do have it much more difficult than Japanese managers do here, you do start to see it just in when a result doesn't go their way, in how players react after the match, and you get the sense that they aren't quite committed, that there are challenges that foreign managers here face in terms of communication, not just language, but communication style. So when a foreign manager comes here and he wins over the locker room, as Ange did, we all stand up and take notice. Because that is a very hard thing to do, and it is incredibly difficult to do it as convincingly as he did, and to achieve what he did in just 2 seasons, going from a club that had no idea what it was doing with itself to being J League champions. So I understand that the patience is in short supply out there. I understand it, but your hearts have to be wide enough to trust the process. Yeah. And you will be rewarded.
Well, I think Celtic fans are known, hopefully, for having big hearts and open minds and open arms, so we will welcome him. We'll welcome Ange and anybody who chooses to bring into the club, and hopefully get behind this philosophy, but plenty for us to chew on anyway. Dan, thank you so much for taking time out your day to join us. It's really been insightful for us, certainly as a group of supporters who didn't know who Ange Postecoglou was a month ago. We certainly stand ourselves in better stead having people like you on the show to give us some insight into that.
I appreciate the opportunity to come on, and preach our gospel. I will say that your show has had some of the most reasonable takes we've heard on Ange these last couple of weeks. I've very much enjoyed listening to you and other Celtic media and to learning about this. Not just the state of things at the club, but the culture and what Ange will be expecting. And I'll tell you, a lot of fans here, everyone wants him to succeed. I think more than anything, it is really, we are losing a giant and our loss is your gain. And I think that if Celtic fans welcome him, if you back him, then you will have 30,000 more fans in Yokohama. Green Brigade, if you're listening, a thank you Yokohama banner at the home opener, would go a long way. Obviously, this is a club with a long relationship with Japan through Shunsuke Nakamura, who's obviously a legend and I think still loved out there. And hopefully this will be a great chance to rekindle that relationship. We'd love to see Ange back out here for a friendly in a year or two. Hopefully, with a couple more trophies under his belt.
Well, we certainly hope that's how things go as well. One thing I'll say to you before you go is trying to dictate what Green Brigade put on their banners is something only a brave man does. But, we'll see how that goes. Thanks very much for your time, Dan, and hopefully we'll catch you again soon on the podcast in the future.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Cheers,
Thank you very much. Well, lots to chew on there. Not all encouraging, I would say. Not all encouraging. Tony, I'll come back to you to get you to expand a little bit more on your concerns there. You're all for the rip-roaring, free-scoring Glasgow Celtic, but that doesn't mean, having the gates open at the back, does it?
Oh, what? Never mind winning. It'll be fun.
We don't do fun.
Yeah, correct, Jim. We don't do fun. We're certainly supposed to be a fun season last season. Look what happened. I'd rather just do the winning. That concerns you greatly. Because, he just said, don't worry about the it'll sort. What if it doesn't sort itself out? It hasn't sorted itself out for a year. We need this to be addressed from the moment the new manager comes in, which is now. He has to address that. Can't go gung-ho. And just hope that you score 4 and if the other team get 3, then so be it. You'll outscore them. Those words concern me greatly.
Yeah.
I will not judge him until I see the way his team lines up and the way we move forward. But things like that don't fill you with real hope, do they? And I'm not wanting to have a downer on him. It's just if that's a guy telling you, it'll be fun.
No, Jim, I have to say, I have been tooting the Ange horn. I have been driving the Postecoglou ute, as I said on Twitter last night. I've been all for his new ideas, his attacking football. But I have come away from that thinking, what are we letting ourselves in for? What do you make of it?
I don't think you want to be too down on the guy straight away. I think that was an obvious question to ask since the guy's been watching them. And that's all you do here, the rip-roaring stuff. But any good football team built on a solid back four and a good goalkeeper. And we have to get that right. So it'll be interesting to see who he has as his coaches next year. And obviously we've been all the talk about John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan staying on, and we're a bit concerned about that. But he has to have somebody who knows how to defend first and foremost. Because if we can't defend, we're not going to win the league next year. No chance. Absolutely no chance. And I was very concerned when I heard that we're going to have fun. We don't do fun, basically. Fun was out years ago. Years ago, because I was on a podcast with Paul about a year and a half ago. And I talked about, I'm obsessed with football. We're all obsessed with, why would we be talking about football at 12:30 on a Friday if we weren't obsessed with football? So we're all obsessed with football. But I'm not in love as much as I used to be with football, because it's about winning. It's all about winning. That's all it is. And what I said in the podcast to Paul is that when I go to a game now, unless we're 3 goals up, I endure the game. It's an endurance. If it's 0-0 with 20 minutes to go, you're going up the wall, basically. We need to score. We need to win the game. So it's all about winning. It's not about entertainment. If we go 3 goals up, we're in the entertainment zone at that point. But if we're 2 goals up, we're still in that endurance zone, because if they score, we don't know what's going to happen next. So the fun has went out of football, unless you're 3 goals up and you're going for 4, 5 and 6. So we need to get the back line right from day one. And if we don't get that right, I'm a bit concerned. But I don't want to be too down on Ange. We want to get behind the guy and be positive, etc., etc. But what Dan said there didn't fill me with a lot of confidence. If he'd have said something like, he sets his teams up really well, 2 big centre halves, don't mess about, wingers bombing forward, getting back, good solid goal. He said something about the goalkeeper runs about a lot. I was a bit confused about that.
If
the
you
goalkeeper
read,
runs
Jim,
about the most.
Jim, if you read the piece, or I would encourage anybody to go and read the piece he wrote in the Japan Times, he mentions specifically...
I don't normally read the Japan Times, so, yeah.
He mentioned specifically that he gets the goalkeeper to play very possession-based football, and it has led on occasion to them conceding some questionable long-range goals. Now, where the goalkeeper is to cause that to happen, I'm not sure. But like we say, he obviously wants players to play in a certain way, and he's not willing to throw them under the bus if he's going to encourage them to play that way, which I think is encouraging. Tony, to be a bit more positive about it though than we have been since Dan went off the call. Okay, it doesn't stand as in good stead for Europe and for progressing in that sense if we're going up against, a high calibre opposition. But what it does encourage me about is, we should be able to score loads of goals in an attacking sense against the domestic opposition without worrying too much about the back, surely.
I mean, that's probably the only positive that you can take about that he loves. He's going to play football, certainly attack-minded in the Celtic way, if you want, for want of a better expression. So I think the fans will warm to that. But the nuts and bolts of football is you have to defend as well. Defending's an art, so's going forward, so you have to master the arts, but I think, as you say, that's the encouraging side of it. But we won't know, like the phony war of words is over. It doesn't matter what anybody says now, because it's all conjecture. Guys can tell you what they've seen in Japan, seen in Australia. Great. It's totally different. He is now in the biggest job of his life. You know what I mean? That's the bottom line. You will never have a job like this ever and again in his career. So he has to make the most of it. Stamp his authority on it by all means. But you can't be reckless. You can't be reckless and ship goals the way they did in Japan or Australian football. Celtic demand that they play a certain way, but they also demand that you defend. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm trying to be as positive as I can. If that's the way they play domestically, so be it. They will get away with it. But in Europe, that gives you grief. But I'm not going to blame them if they get puffed out of Europe early doors, because the time scale and time frames to set up a team and get you competitive for that arena is non-existent now. If he gets Celtic through the qualifiers, he's a miracle worker. An absolute miracle worker. Yep. You know what I mean? So I absolve him of blame for the Champions League qualifiers. As Jim said, I just hope he gets off to a flyer domestically if he goes somewhere like Pretoria or Tynecastle and wins. But I think he's got an exemption for the Champions League qualifiers, because to announce him in June and then say next month you're playing in the Champions League, and you don't know who's coming, who's going, what team you're going to be, what team you're going to be playing for a start, or what team you're going to set out. So I think he's got, I wouldn't say a free pass, but anything he achieves in the qualifiers, you'll say, wow, well done, and I think that's the positives that you've got to take from it. I don't want to have a downer on him, but if you're going to experts who tell you how his teams play and he's dismissing defence, don't worry about that. Alarm bells ring. And they're ringing loudly.
It did make me giggle, I'll give you that. But as you say, biggest job of his life, and if there's any confirmation of that required, we've seen the reaction from Football Australia, from the J League, from a lot of big institutions all over the world saying this is a massive opportunity for Australians in football, and it's a massive opportunity for him. I think he recognises it, and I think he's going to put the work in. Jim, another man for whom
I think also
it might
Tony.
be the... Sorry, on you go, Jim. On you go.
No, it's okay. On you go.
I was going to say to you, another man for whom this is the biggest job he's probably ever had is Dom Mackay. We saw him have a little small interview on the end of Ange's introductory video when he was appointed, and he had a lot to say about a new vision for the club and modernisation, and a lot of encouraging words, but buzz phrases to an extent. Could you take anything concrete from what he said? Do you think were you encouraged by it, or do you think it's kind of we'll just have to wait and see?
Before I answer that question, what I was going to say was that the phrase Tony used there was "ship goals in Japan." That sounds like a song. Ship goals in Japan. That's the future.
Get it written,
I thought it was
Tony,
great. I thought Dom Mackay was great. I said before he has to watch what he says when he speaks in public, and didn't say very much wrong. And if he had to learn any lessons from his appearance at the fans forum, he certainly learned the lessons. I thought it was great. I think he came across really, really well. 1 or 2 wee kind of buzz phrases, as you said there. The thing I liked when he said that he wanted a winner, and he talked about winning in Japan and Australia. And I think that's a big thing as well, because one of the things I was a bit concerned about the guy who didn't take the job was that he'd only really managed Bournemouth and had a bit of success there. I think to be a good manager, you have to manage at least 2 clubs and have success in 2 clubs. And that's why when people ask me who I think is the best man, well, Team Clough, because of what Clough did with 2 teams and how far he took those 2 teams. So what Ange has done, he's been successful in Australia, successful in Japan, fine. Let's get him. I thought Dom Mackay was really good, came across great. One wee slip that he kind of made, he talked about he'd been speaking to Ange for weeks. And you thought, well, if you've been him for weeks and you've only announced this last week, how does that tie in? So that was a bit but I thought he was good. Yeah, I thought he was good. And hopefully he talks about trying to modernise the club. And it's one of these things, it's a bit of a catch-22 for me, because if he modernises the club significantly, that's a huge indictment of the people who are there just now. You'd like to think we're going to modernise it, but if it's got a long way to go, as I said, that's just, not very good news in the guys who are there just now. But hopefully it does, on and off the park, and it's a kind of brave new future for Dom Mackay.
Yeah, interesting to hear him. Interesting to hear what he sounds like. Tony, I thought he was encouraging. I thought he was well spoken. Like Jim said, there's a few things that we weren't happy with, the way he addressed Rangers and the fans forum, and some of the things that he said that he was obviously maybe trying a little bit too hard to ingratiate himself with certain parts of the support when he was doing that, and has obviously sort of changed tack as far as that's concerned. What were your thoughts on the video, on the interview, on what he said and what his vision is for the club going forward?
Like Jim, I was impressed. And again, if he does modernise the club drastically, then shame on the others. I exempt Dom Mackay from a lot of this as well. I know he's been involved in this process, but I think if this goes belly up, then I'm not going to be pointing the finger at Dom Mackay per se. He's walked into this, and he's walked into something that he thought Celtic had a manager and they were down the road with, and then all of a sudden they've changed, veered off course and got this manager in. So he has to talk this new manager up and say they've recruited a winner and all that, all those kind of sound bites. Yeah, he ticked all those boxes. He's came across well. The one positive thing is he's willing to meet people. Dominic Mackay, he's willing to put his head above the parapet and speak for a start. He's also said that he wants to engage with fans, supporters groups, and all sorts of Celtic supporters and all sorts of Celtic people. So I'm happy about that. As I say, originally we only want our CEO to come out and speak when he has to, but if he's going to come out and meet people and tell us things and be a bit more transparent, then I'm all for that. That can only be a good thing. And as Jim said there, he wants to modernise the club, great, but I mean, how much modernising do we need? And if it turns out to be a total revolution, then the ones at the top aren't fit for purpose. But again, I give Dominic Mackay an exemption from that. He's inheriting them as much as they're inheriting him. So now have to straddle that line, of working for the board and being a supporters man too, which he seems to want to be, because he did it at the SRU. So in terms of his interview, I thought his interview was fine, but everybody in those situations can talk a good game, can't they? It's now.
Also, Laura. Actually,
Go on, Dan.
I think also, Laura, he said, I wanted a winner. Didn't say we. He said, I wanted a winner, which is interesting again. Maybe reading too much into that, but I wanted a winner.
And I want to know, I would like to know how much he was involved in that process, Jim, of selecting Ange Postecoglou. So I don't know how big his input was, or if it's just been totally his input since the Eddie Howe deal collapsed. So I'd like to know things like that moving forward.
Some of these we might get
I
answers
think you'll never find that out.
Yeah.
I think you'll never find that one out, because again, you can read too much into these things, but the fact he said, I wanted a winner, and he said he's been speaking to Ange for a few weeks, does that mean maybe somebody else is speaking to somebody else for a few weeks? They wanted, I don't want to get into that kind of stuff, but it's just, as I said before, he has to kind of watch what words that he uses, because people like us and the Celtic fans will leap on the words and say, what does he mean by that? Is there some sort of hidden meaning in there?
He seems open and honest enough, but to genuine questions. That's what I mean.
Jim, I'll come to you on I've been seeing a lot of comments, and thanks everybody for commenting on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook where we are live. Unfortunately not had a chance to get to as many of them as we normally do today because of having our guest Dan on and having a lot to talk about. But Jim, a lot of people talking about how long he's got to make an impact, how long the new manager has got to make an impact, and patience is a big theme of what we're seeing going forward. Is there a risk, do you think, that failure of Postecoglou will translate for some people to failure of the CEO, or do you think people are, going to be able to separate those two things out?
I think Dom is completely separate from this. He's just in the door. He's getting his feet under the table. He'll find out what's what. I think if it doesn't work, hopefully it works out. If it doesn't work out, then I think Dom will sort that out next time. And if anything happens next time, it's on his watch. I think we've talked about it's been a pantomime so far. He's walked into this pantomime. He's new to it. Ange is new to it. All these new players coming into it are new to it. And that's my biggest concern, is that in any normal season, you might lose 2 or 3 players, and a new manager's coming into a kind of good squad of players. Where you're looking to add 2 or 3 players to that. He's having to in, however many 6, 7, 8, 9 players. The culture's going to change. We've lost people who've been Celtic players for a number of years. We don't have that. Maybe he has to bring in some ex-Celts, possibly. So I don't blame Dom Mackay for anything. I don't blame Ange for anything. If this doesn't go to plan, I think we all know where the blame lies. How you change that's a different thing, because we've seen, obviously, lots of fans been not very happy with the board and sacked the board and all this kind of stuff. Well, you can't sack the board. There's only one way you're getting rid of the board. If you want rid of the board, and that's to buy shares. That's the only way you're going to move that along. So it's okay for people to howl at the moon all the time, get this guy out and get that guy. And what does this guy do? What does this guy do? At the end of the day, if you want to have change, the only way you do that is getting shares. Sorry, I've off that tangent there. Dom's not to blame. Ange is not to blame. And hopefully they're both successful. And we're not talking about blame in a year's time.
Well, I've read your mind, Jim. I know what he's going to do. He's going to get an ex-Celt that we all want back from the J-League, Koki Mizuno. He'll be the man to come in and save us. I'm sure of it. I think everybody at Celtic State of Mind wishes both Dom and Ange all the best of luck in their new roles. We want only success for the club, as I'm sure they both do, and we'll see how it goes. But to close out the show, we can't really do anything other than look ahead to the big tournament that starts today, which Scotland is a part of, the Euros. We might have had to wait an extra year, but given how long we've had to wait before now, I think an extra year was nothing to us Scotland fans. So, Tony, I'll come to you first. 1998 was the last time we were there. We were part of the opening ceremony in the World Cup against Brazil. There couldn't be a more glamorous start. Slightly less glamorous start against Czech Republic coming on Monday at 2:00. But how are you feeling about it? You looking forward to it?
I can't wait. I cannot wait. I was at that opening game against Brazil in '98. It was wonderful, as I said, told the story, and it was just brilliant. It's just been so long, since you've seen Scotland at a major international tournament. And I mentioned him earlier. Quick story. Arthur Montford, when I was at college, I did an interview. The brief was to interview somebody famous. So somebody famous to me was Arthur Montford. I'd always wanted to do it. And so I phoned him up and he agreed to do it. And I met him outside the Torrance Inn in Bishop Briggs. And the pub wasn't even open. So we sat in his car and we were waiting till the pub opened. And I just started talking to him. And Arthur Montford was the biggest Scotland fan ever. So he lived through all the great times, all the 5 World Cups in a row and stuff like that. And he said when he was in the studio, he had like a Scotland rosette underneath his jacket and all that. And whenever they cut to a break, it was bedlam because Arthur Montford was going off his nut and heading every ball and kicking every ball. So he said to me, on the year before Scotland played in '78 World Cup finals, he went on a tour of South America and he was in the Maracana at night. And Bobby Clark, who was a deputy Alan Off, was in goal, and he was behind the goal, and he was saying, "Please, Bobby, just one, just let me hit one." And he said, "Oh, all right." And he annoyed him that much. He said, "All right, on you come." And he put the ball on the spot, and he's got a sports jacket and flannels on, he said, and shoes. And he says he started commentating on himself, right? And he was like, "And it's Montford. This kick will win the World Cup 1970. It was Montford," and he smashes it into the roof of the net, right? There's nobody in the Maracana, and he's jumping around. He's like, "Montford scores! World Cup!" And he's making a noise of the 200,000 people, right? And he's like, and he's telling me, and I'm killing myself laughing. I'm in dreamland. This is brilliant. And I say to him, he says, "That's how much of a Scotland fan. I just loved Scotland. I used to go to Hampden for internationals hours before it and talk to all the punters that were streaming in. Loved it." So after about an hour or so, I get out the car and I punched there because I'm like a wee ambition of mine. And he says, "Before you go, Anthony," I says, "Aye." He says, "Can I give you a bit of advice?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "See, when you wake up in the morning, put on your shoes. Don't ever put on your slippers." And he walked away, and it was like somebody, like the stars in your eyes.
Off into the mist.
Aye, and it's only when I got older I realised what he meant. Always stay active, stay busy. And have a purpose in life. And he was just a wonderful guy, and he loved Scotland. And whenever Scotland are in a tournament, or whenever Scotland are playing a big match, I always think about him, and because he commentated in so many of them. Jim will remember his big Jim Holton coming up in 73 when he scored a goal at Hampden against Czechoslovakia and stuff like that, and Jordan. So, and he was just a cracking man. So, yeah, I mean, I just can't wait for the Euros. I get as excited as he did. About Scotland playing in a major tournament, so I roll on Monday.
Absolutely. Jim, I'll come to you for your thoughts on it. I love every aspect of it. The games back to back every day, the sticker albums, the kits, the pundits that they get in from here, there and everywhere that you never see before the tournament, never see again afterwards. It's just an experience, What are your feelings going into our first tournament in over 20 years?
Well, I'm a big fan of Scotland. That was lucky enough to get a ticket to the Norway game in Bordeaux, 98 World Cup. I was at the 3 Euro 96 games. So these a long time ago. It's obviously lost something with the fact that not many fans getting in. And I think the idea to split the thing up into different countries was a daft idea.
Yeah.
I think that takes someone that would actually go to France or go into Mexico and all that. That was a big thing at the time. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm not as excited maybe as I've been in previous ones. I think we've got some good players, some youngish players that are playing at a good level. We've got a manager who knows how to organise a team. It won't be much fun with Steve Clarke, but hopefully we won't lose many goals. I think the first game is vital. I think if we can get maybe a kind of 1-0 on Monday, that would set us up nicely. Maybe get through as one of the best third place teams. If we get a nothing each in the last game and get away from Wembley not getting a doing, I think that's kind of my expectations. So a sneaky 1-0, a nothing each in the last one, and a 3-0 defeat at Wembley, and that'll get us into the next round. So here's hoping we get into the next round for a change. Because if we do, and you get into that knockout section, who knows what could happen next. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Somebody's making a point as well that if you finish second in the group or first in the group, you might play like a big gun like France. So they were saying that England might want to finish second in the group.
Yeah.
They were
Tactically.
Tactic, so I was kind of wondering about that, so if that's the case, then go on Scotland. We'll take whoever, as long as we get through to the next round.
Well, there's the old adage, isn't there? If you want to win these tournaments, you've got to play all the good teams at some point. So, may as well be in the last 16 as in the final, But we're not here to talk about England. We're here to talk about Scotland. But yeah, hopefully.
You know what they're like, Laura? They've won it already. So
they have won it already. I didn't know they had, but they seem to know they have anyway. But
what's coming up?
We look forward to it anyway. Come on, Scotland. Do us proud. I'm sure you will. But before we finish up the show, I just wanted to leave everybody with this wee story. I am wearing a t-shirt, which I don't think you can see. It's of the Walt Disney classic from 1997 of Hercules. And the reason I'm wearing it today is because, now I know there's a bit of to and forth about Heracles is the Greek one and based in Hercules, the Roman one. But Disney took a bit of artistic license and went with Hercules, the Greek version. And I just thought it was interesting because anybody that knows that film knows he starts off kind of a half god, if you like, weak, lost his powers, unknown in the land that he's in, down in the land of Greece from Mount Olympus. By the end of the film, he's world renowned for his skill, for his strength, for his leadership. Postecoglou, that's all I'm going to say. Perhaps he could have a Hercules-like story and become a god in the East End of Glasgow. That is my hope. That is my wish. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks Jim and Tony for your time today. That's been ACSOM. That's been Friday. Come on Scotland. We will see you next week.